All right, here's our first book on our blog. We are going to learn about how crayons are made. And that's the title of our book as well. How is a Crayon Made? By Oz Charles. It's hard to imagine a world without crayons. If all the regular size crayons made in the United States last year were laid end to end around the equator, they would encircle the globe 4.5 times. Most people have crayons, but how are they made? How are they made? I don't know. Let's find out. The first step in making the crayon is the creation of the color. This takes place at the color mill. Water and various chemicals are mixed in a big wooden tanks to create the pigments that give crayons their color. Each pigment is made in a separate tank. The tanks are made out of wood rather than metal because metal would interfere with the chemical reaction that creates the colors. Interesting. Didn't know that. Each color solution then passes through the filter press that squeezes out extra water, leaving moist cakes of color. And here is someone doing just that. Notice how he's getting some of that same pigment on him. That's why he's wearing gloves and a uniform that he can then clean. The cakes of color are scraped off the press, broken up by hand, and put into stacked plastic trays. Here they're making the color red. The plastic trays are put into a kiln to dry. They bake for 3 to 4 days, leaving hard chunks of color. The colored chunks are sent to blending machines where they are mixed all according to special formulas to create different shades. So if we were going to make purple or violet, we would be mixing blue pigment with red pigment. See how that happens? They blend them together. Next, a machine called a pulverizer, which is like a meat grinder, grinds the blended colors into fine powder. The powder is put into the bags, weighed, and sent to the crayon manufacturing plant. Look, it looks like it gets everywhere. All over. He's got some on his face, too. Ooh. Here's the manufacturing plant. Outside the plant, there are many storage tanks that hold heated liquid wax. Each tank is 26 feet high and holds 17,000 gallons of wax. Liquid paraffin wax is pumped through large pipes. Here we have some large pipes. Pumped into pipes into mixing vats inside the plant. Now powdery colored pigment is poured into each vat of clear wax. So here is the wax that's all melted. And then they start adding pigment. We've got yellow pigment here. A rod inside the mixing vat stirs the colored pigments and the clear wax, creating colored wax. Ooh, and look at all those beautiful colors. Very cool. Here's one of the big mixing vats. The colored wax, heated to about 240 degrees Fahrenheit, is piped from mixing vat into rotary mold tables. The rotary mold table is like a giant muffin tin with thousands of little holes. The wax flows into the holes, which are molds for the crayons. Each table has 2,426 molds. While the wax is being poured, the spinning blade prevents bubbles from forming inside the crayons and keeps the consistency free of lumps and smooth. The rotary mold table moves in a circular motion. Inside the table are pipes filled with cold water between 40 and 70 degrees, depending on the color crayon being made. Isn't that interesting that the temperature has to do with the colors too? I wonder what would happen to a certain color if it got too hot. The hot wax is then cooled by water for 4 to 7 minutes, again depending on the color being made. As the wax cools, it starts to harden. And you can see that wax goes from being kind of chunky to really smooth. Excess hardened wax is scraped off the top of the table to be remelted later for reuse. So they recycle in this process too. The crayons left inside the molds are then injected into a square metal frame filled with little holes, one for each crayon. Each hole contains a rod at the bottom. And there we go. Ooh, I start to see them looking like crayons. Look at that. See the holes that the wax was poured into? The frame moves away from the table and the rods push the crayons into an inspection bin. The crayons are checked for broken tips or chipped ends. Damaged ones are returned to the mixing vat to be melted and remolded. The crayons are then fed one by conveyor belt into a labeling machine. Each rotary table has a dual labeling machines for the color being labeled. Alright, so here we have where they're being sorted and checked. And right into here is where it's going down a conveyor belt to get the labels put on them. The labeling machines wrap and glue the label color around each crayon. The labeled crayons are picked up by the operator running the machine and checked again for broken tips. See that conveyor belt leading down here? Here we go, getting the labels on. And here's another person checking them. Boy, that's a lot of crayons. Can you pick up that many crayons without dropping them? I can't. Pretty talented. Meanwhile, a number of crayons from each batch have been taken to the quality control lab to be tested. A transversive breaking machine, or a crayon eater, checks all the crayons for strength. Electrically operated, the machine consists of a beam that acts like a fulcrum or a pulley. It puts different amounts of pressure on the crayons at different points. If the crayon breaks sooner than it's supposed to, the batch from which it came from is remelted and remolded again. Crayons are also tested for intensity of color. Is the red bright enough? Is it too pale or too dark? They are even tested for consistency. Does the wax lay down smoothly on the paper? Is it lumpy? Is there a waxy buildup? All good questions. And look, isn't that a fun job? Someone gets to test out all the crayons. I'd take that job. I would totally take that job. After the samples have been passed the quality tests, the undamaged labeled crayons are scooped up and put back in wooden crates. Crates of same color crayons are moved by forklift into the packing area. So here's those crates of crayons. Oh, it's probably my favorite picture in the whole book. The crayons are put into packing machines that have different slots for different colors. Pretty cool. Just as a candy vending machine sorts out different coins you put into and drops your selection, the packing machine sorts and arranges the crayons into different color assortments. Narrow cardboard boxes called sleeves enter the machine, and they are flat. The machine opens them and puts the color assorted crayons inside. There they go, going into the boxes. Ooh, brand new crayons. Another packing machine called a boxing machine puts an assortment of crayon-filled sleeves into crayon boxes, like the ones you see in the stores. Different machines can box anywhere from 6 to 64 crayons. Wow. The finished boxes are then packed and shipped to the warehouse where they are loaded onto trucks and delivered to the stores. They are ready to be bought, taken home, and used, and the rest is up to you. The end. Favorite picture again. So that's how crayons are made. All right, now let's do a crayon project. Go to the directions page on our blog, and I will have a project all about crayons for you. All right, see you soon.